Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about The Haunting of Hill House, Part 2.
So if you have not yet listened to Part 1 of this podcast, it did air on January, when was that, 2 weeks ago? That was the 6th. Mm-hmm. And we asked for your feedback, so we did actually get some feedback. So I'm actually very pleased with that. So that's great. We have some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, people listen to us. Hooray!
So if you did not previously listen to that episode, previously on Patron Saints podcast, we talked about how people are like houses and how kind of haunting ourselves. I talked a bit about how this really changed how ghost stories should be told. Mm-hmm. I think Mike Flanagan did a fantastic job with the show. I really gave glowing praise there. So if somebody can send that part 1 out to him somehow, let him know that I want to thank him for The Haunting of Hill House. It's just brilliant, in my opinion.
Yep, and then I also talked about kind of the parenting mistakes, I guess, that occurred in Haunting of Hill House, because there was quite a few. So, yeah, go ahead and give us a listen to that part 1. If you don't, I'll forgive you, because it's okay, because you can still listen to part 2 and you would still pick up and understand what we're talking about as long as you have watched The Haunting of Hill House.
Well, I kind of felt like you were going to insert a threat there. If you have not listened to it, I will find you.
I would not threaten our listeners.
I will find you.
I don't know where any of them live, so I can't threaten them properly.
Well, that's true. We have almost no statistics on our listeners because we pay for a very basic plan. So
that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we still love y'all. We don't need to know where you live.
Yeah, we don't need to know.
And
these
I'm sure
things.
you don't want us to know where you live.
Like the demographics of our listeners. Yeah, yes. that would be bad.
Anyway, let's move on to what we actually want to talk about today.
I wanted to talk about Steve. I know I brought that up in the first part of this episode, 2-episode stint. We're doing things differently now, so
it's okay. You're confused. I'll get you on track. Don't worry.
It's all right. And I was there was a great feedback presented to us from another podcast, and there was some great synergy there. I love when that happens. Mm-hmm. From the Living Dead Girls podcast, go check them out. I really have only gotten a chance to listen to a little bit of their podcast. I'm actually looking forward to listening to more. It looks like they talk about some really great things, including The Haunting of Hill House. I know that they loved it, and they got back to us on Instagram. Anyway, they asked us, they said that, grief really was the theme of the entire show. And so they were wondering, was the theme really about not getting any closure from your grief, in that you just kind of find ways to feel comfortable with your grief? And that really sparked a bit of thought in me. It was a lot of, well, yeah, I really do feel on some levels that yes, we never do get closure from our grief. So I really started to think about this. Do we as human beings ever get closure? And if we do, what does that look like?
I mean, unfortunately, in my lifetime, I have had to experience quite a bit of passing. I've had many friends pass away during my life, family members as well. Recently, my stepdad passed away. And, obviously I'm still in the process of figuring out how I feel about his passing and trying to deal with my grief with him since it's still so new. But thinking back on the other people who have passed away, I don't think I am 100% closed. I don't have closure 100%, but it's okay. Like, I'm not like mad I don't have closure, but I don't feel like I have the closure.
Well, for a lot of people, I really feel that we like to pretend that the funeral or memorial services are really closure for the family. There's a whole huge industry that's based around that. Mm-hmm. But I really don't feel like it is. We really do kind of carry these things with us for the rest of our lives. And I think this has a lot to do with, with what, Steve's his whole final monologue is about, mm-hmm. is that we kind of carry that with us, and that we kind of, we do really just kind of really haunting ourselves with him. I really feel like. So it begs the question then, how do you become comfortable with your grief then?
I guess when I'm finally comfortable with my grief, it doesn't hurt as much anymore. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm still, I'll still think about those friends and family who have passed, but I'm not so double down and bent down in grief mm-hmm. over it. I can live my day by day. I'm still sad that they're not here. I wish that they were here, but it doesn't affect my day-to-day life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Mm-hmm. And I really feel that stories are important for healing and for starting to feel that comfortableness with your grief. Mm-hmm. The more that you repeat a story, the more that you feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah.
Which is why I think in the beginning it was so important for me to talk about our miscarriages and for that grief to begin to start healing, which, it was still a long process. I think it wasn't until maybe a year or two after Peter was born that I really started to get comfortable with that grief for myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is with ours too, with our miscarriages, it happened right before people were very vocal about
miscarriages.
Yeah, about miscarriages. What's his name? Facebook guy.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, our miscarriages happened right around where Mark Zuckerberg had announced that him and his wife had struggled with fertility and had their own miscarriages. And then it kind of opened up this floodgate of people telling their own stories, which is very healing. I think you're right. It's the more you tell the story, the more, I don't know if you get comfortable, but it's okay. It becomes okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think telling the truth about the story, because mm-hmm. Steve did tell the story a few thousand times.
Yeah.
He wrote it down. He sold it. He sold the story, but I don't think he ever came to terms with the story. And there's this big fan theory out there about...
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about Steve as in The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, Stephen. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. For some reason, I thought Steve Jobs for a second, and I was very confused. It's okay. Continue. I'm sorry.
Or Steve from the OA, or Steve from Stranger Things.
Yes. So...
We all know about my connected Netflix universe theory.
It's not a thing, but that's okay. I still love you.
It's my own fan theory, okay? So there was this big fan theory, speaking of fan theories, out there about the characters, which was confirmed by Mike Flanagan on Twitter, that each of the characters represents a stage of grief, which I know that we brought this up way back when, in our very first episode on the OA, but mm-hmm. I really feel like this happens quite a bit. It's an archetype for storytellers to use, and Stephen is denial, very much denial.
Yeah, 100%.
So So then I really want to say, how does denial build walls from that story? How does it prevent you from facing the truth, the honest truth of your story to heal?
That's easy. Denial in itself is a wall.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you like decide that you are going to deny the truth, flat out, wall. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you've put that up. So denial in itself is a wall.
Well, do you feel like Steve was really believing the lies that he was telling?
What do you mean, what lies?
Well, the lies about what his family was crazy, that it was mental illness and not some really just a breakdown of psyche, and it was.
I think it wasn't a lie because there was still some truth to it. Because his mom, before they moved into the house, did have a history of some kind of mental illness. We don't know what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of hinted in the story. So I don't. Maybe that's why he believed it, because there was still
An
a
element
little
of
bit of
truth.
truth to it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all of them were elements of truth to it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think ghosts is really a very weird thing to jump to automatically in a story.
Well, a very logical person doesn't believe in ghosts. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like somebody who prides themselves of being very logical, like Steve does, it's really easy for them to write off ghosts and write off spirits.
Well, I wrote a little bit about this last week, and it will be published before this podcast actually airs. So, and I talk about that and how our brains really want to believe the fantastic. You know, that we automatically want to believe that those fantastical patterns mean faces on Mars rather than just shadows on rocks.
Yep.
And it's hard for us to let go of some of those fantastical things, and I think that's what he was trying to say to them, and maybe it's not so much a lie, but it's more what you said is trying to be more rational about his explanations for things. But for somebody who's going to be that rational about things, how does that affect those who do believe in the fantastical, who know that the fantastical is there? And in this case, yes, they're real ghosts. How does that affect the rest of his family? I mean, maybe it's just better to let somebody believe in the beautiful lies sometimes than to shatter their illusions. Does that make the question a little bit more, make it more sense? Have it make more sense?
I think so. And I really depend. I think honestly, it depends on the circumstance. It depends on the scenario. For me, being somebody who doesn't really follow any one specific religion, I consider myself more agnostic than anything. When somebody passes away, I am very open and honest and just say, I don't know. I don't know what happened. He could be in heaven, or he could just not exist any longer. I don't know, and I'm comfortable acknowledging that. But I am not about to tell somebody who honestly believes that somebody is in heaven that that person is not in heaven.
Yeah.
Also that's kind of rude if you tell somebody that. But yeah.
Well, and that's what I really feel like Steve at the beginning of the Stephen. I don't remember what they call him technically. It's Steve. But we're going to, like, in the beginning of the story, I really feel like that's who he is. He doesn't want them to believe in these beautiful lies as he sees it. And then he wants to just shatter their illusions so that they can live in the real world, or so he believes it to be. And I think that's really detrimental to his family.
Oh, yeah.
Like with Luke, and this is somebody that I wanted to talk more about but like we're not going to have a whole lot of time for that. But
unless you get enough feedback to us that you want us to focus on Luke, then maybe it'll happen.
Yeah. But I think that's the way, why Luke is addicted, why Luke is the way that Luke is because his big brother didn't believe him.
Yeah.
He didn't believe him that Abigail existed. He didn't believe him about all of these other things, and he tells him that it doesn't exist while they're in the Red Room.
I just realized something. The kids might not know really that Abigail actually existed. Because when she passed away, the Dudleys,
took her.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that Luke and Nell knew.
But because of Steve, and Steve's all set on her not actually existing.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know, which can also cause a lot of other things going on in their psyche. But
yeah.
I mean, that might be why Theo is so closed off from everybody and wasn't so open with her siblings, probably because of the fact that Steve so readily shut down the rest of his siblings and basically called them silly and stupid. And, of course, there's no such thing as, ghosts, and what you experienced was just in your imagination, Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I get why Theo didn't really open up too much.
And I think that at the very end of the story, that was his transformation point, was seeing what they saw, and finally seeing that that they weren't just beautiful lies, that it was truth.
Well, first of all, those things that they saw were not beautiful.
Well, yeah, but in my metaphor, it's beautiful lies. So
okay, yes, but they were definitely not. I mean, the bent neck lady.
Yeah, it was not beautiful.
Not beautiful.
No. And so I think that he comes to a comfort level at the end. I know that you disagree with me on this, that that you don't feel like Steve really came to a comfort level at the end.
Well, I don't think that he has actually fully yet processed what happened to them. I think his journey is just beginning. Realizing that his siblings didn't have a wild imagination, that they really did experience these things. And he's now just going through that process of trying to figure out how he's going to deal with that information now.
Well, I think that's probably an arc that they can explore in season 2, which has already been confirmed that they are getting a season 2, and I know that's kind of how are they going to do season 2.
Yeah.
I really felt like it was a good complete package.
Yeah, it was a very satisfactory sandwich.
Yeah. And I think that for me, I think what changed his mind was finally seeing his father as his father at the very end. And right when he asked him the question, what did I see just now? Mm-hmm. When he knew that he saw his father's body, but he's also talking to his father right in front of him.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, well, that's a big turning point. I mean, he just went through a lot of stuff that he had logically written off as being not possible.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that he is just... It's going to be interesting to see how he's changed, because I mean, any normal person outside of the realm of, Netflix original series, that's a lot to comprehend and a lot to take in, and you definitely have to kind of revisit your ideas about how the world works, and that is not an easy task.
Well, and I think it's very apropos to those traumatic events that cause grief. Mm-hmm. And I think this goes back to that statement that the Living Dead Girls podcast gave to us. Was the theme was about guilt and how we never get closure on our guilt, that we just we just kind of find ways to get comfortable with it. And
You mean grief, not guilt?
guilt, well, yeah, grief. Sorry. Thank you.
No, I was about to say, okay, I guess also, too, a little bit of survivor's guilt.
Well,
with the
guilt
kids, but that's
and
another
grief
thing.
and
Yeah.
well, and I'm just thinking of Steve's end monologue there, that ghosts can be grief or guilt and all those other things, and that they kind of are with us the rest of our lives. Just like Luke's bowler hat man, who's, obviously his addiction as well. And, all of those things that we just kind of carry with us, that we do as human beings carry this baggage around with us like that. And for him, it is going to be a long journey, and he's going to carry that weight of his father and putting him in charge of the house afterwards.
I wonder, are they going to go back for the body, you think?
I don't know. Did he? No, we didn't see him carry his dad out, did we?
No, I don't think so.
Oh. Huh. Probably. Things left for season 2.
Yes, of course. All right. Anything else you'd like to talk about before we talk about Nell?
No, that's it.
All right. So we're going to go to the very other end of the sibling age range, and we're going to talk about the youngest, Nell, obviously, because I just said her name. So we had on our Instagram page, which we have some pretty great memes, not going to lie. They're not all, A+, but, some of them out there are pretty good that we make up and throw out there.
Yeah, they're not all dank, but,
But this
most
one,
are dank.
we had thrown out one in regards to our reaction to finding out that Nell was, in fact, the bent neck lady, and how everybody was shocked. I mean, if you weren't shocked by that, if you knew that she was the bent neck lady, and you're lying. You're just lying if you figured it out beforehand. But anyway, so we had one person comment, Cindy Benkin. She said that this moment in the story was actually the saddest part of the whole entire story. Realizing that Nell was haunted by herself, and that she was personally touched by Nell as a character. And I think a lot of us could probably agree with that. I mean, you were kind of talking about that ahead of time, already, about haunting yourself. And it's almost like she had this weird sense of, this is going to be the end result of my life. And unfortunately, a lot of people who suffer through depression kind of have that strong feeling like she had, there's something coming after me. I don't know what it is. And I just feel hopeless and I feel lost and nobody's willing to help.
Yeah. Well, I think almost all of the characters experience their own moment of hopelessness. For Steve, it wasn't until he got to the house, I think.
Yeah, no, he kind of was a little hopeless beforehand because, his wife left him and his wife kicked him out, actually. But anyway, that's a whole other story, a whole other ballpark that I don't want to get into because I was really mad at him.
Yeah, opening up that can of worms of not telling your spouse about a secret vasectomy. That's...
Yes,
yeah,
especially when you're trying to have children. Yes. Anyway, back to Nell. So, did you have any specific characteristic about her that you connected with?
There was a lot there. I think just her peaceful nature. She seemed, at peace with the world, but also haunted. Well, obviously haunted by herself. But
when was she at peace with the world, though?
At her wedding, where she was just kind of oh no, everything's okay. Is Luke going to be here? And I just, she made the character real in that for me. Not really that I connected with, but it felt real. Yeah.
Okay. Obviously we just said that Nell was haunting herself, literally. Have you ever felt that way yourself, though?
All the time.
Well, in what way?
Well, and I think this is going back to that word that I accidentally used. It was Freudian slip there. Was with guilt. I think we all haunt ourselves with the guilt of things that we've done in our past, whether it be just something that we did that was stupid or just something that we did that we ultimately regret. Like, like there's that moment in, your teenage self where you're like, man, why did I say that to this person? Mm-hmm. I shouldn't have said that. This was just like the worst thing I could have possibly said at that moment. I don't know why I did that. And you're still haunted by it. And that person probably doesn't even think about it anymore. But you yourself, you're haunted by it. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I think that we all haunt ourselves in our own ways.
Yeah. I think in my way of me haunting myself is I tend to get in my own way when it comes to doing a good job at work. I know how to do the job. I can do the job. But then there's just something inside of me where I just get these weeks where I'm just like, ugh. I know I can do it. I know I'm good at it. But I just, it's not that it's almost like I don't care. I care enough about the customers to where, I want to make sure that they are actually, helped in the right way and they get the stuff done that they need to get done. But then there's other steps to my job that I just kind of, shrug off sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's my own darn fault. I just don't want to do it, or I just don't have the willpower to make that extra step. And that itself is kind of also a haunting of myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. So it might not be super big, I don't feel guilty about it at all because the only person it's hurting is really myself,
But I'm sure there's still those moments that...
Oh, no, for sure. I definitely have. But for what's been going on in my life most recently and what's affecting my life currently, that's probably the biggest aspect.
Okay.
Yep. And then, Nell also struggled with not being believed of her experience, mainly by Steve, as a child. And as a result, it was really hard for her to, find a professional that could actually help her in the way that she needed help. That last doctor she saw, just why would you tell her that anyway? Sorry. But have you, also experienced something similar to where, you were asking for help, but just the help that you were trying to seek definitely was not the right help that you needed at that time?
All the time. I grew up in an evangelical church, and, my imaginary friend was God, in a sense. And... for me, there were so many of those things that I believed beautiful lies about my own life, that, I was meant to be like this prophet or whatever. And, those were things that, you're just going to, brush off a kid because, they're just a silly kid and, with delusions of grandeur. But having those feelings of, being paranoid about something. I was always worried about my family and just silly little things that, I know that people just, brushed off. When my family needed help, my family did need help and people would brush it off. Financially, we're there was a summer that we only ate rice and beans all summer. So, those were things that, it's hard for you to tell people. And when you actually do tell them, you want them to help, but ultimately they don't. Mm-hmm. You just feel like people don't care about you. Yeah.
Well, and it's I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. One, sometimes when you're asking for help, the person isn't realizing that you're asking for help sometimes. And then I also think, too, that it's kind of hard. I mean, it has to do with a pride thing. So you might be asking for help, but you might be asking in a way that they don't understand. and they don't necessarily know that that's what you're doing. So that could also be, I think it's just a lot of factors that come into play with that for sure. I mean, Nell even, called out to her siblings for help, when she realized that, okay, well, I'm going to go to the house. I'm going to call my siblings and see if anybody talks me out of it, because I'm sure that's what she was trying to do. I'm sure she was, she didn't want to, but she was trying to find somebody to maybe talk her out of it. And no one answered. No one answered. For one reason or another, they were busy. They didn't answer the phone. And for all we know, the reason why she died is because nobody answered the phone.
That brings up a really interesting question. And it often does with weird time travel, timey-wimey stuff. Was she destined to be going to the house and becoming the bent neck lady?
Well, I guess when it comes to storytelling-wise, yes. I mean, obviously, that's what the writers intended.
Well, yes.
But, I mean, I guess, obviously, this stuff wouldn't happen in real life, but, yeah, I don't know. That is a lot. That is kind of weird because, if they did answer the phone, then there wouldn't be a bent neck lady. Or maybe she was always meant to be the bent neck lady. We just didn't know when in her life she would become the bent neck lady. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it could have happened when she was older. Maybe not at this time.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, was there ever a time, trying to not change the subject 100%, but was there ever a time when you realized after the fact that somebody was reaching out to you and you either didn't know or you didn't answer?
That's incredibly difficult because recently at work we did have in my department we had a coworker who took his own life. I won't go into details because I don't want to glorify it, but I mean that's something that we as a team kind of spent long hours of our day just discussing. Was how could we have known? Like, was there something that we could have known that he was reaching out for help? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you can't know, because oftentimes those of us who get suicidal thoughts, who struggle with things like that, we don't want people to know. Yet we also want help, and it's not. It's a weird dichotomy. It's a weird place to be in, the tension of wanting help, but also not wanting help.
Well, and I think part of it, too, is a lot of people think that they don't deserve the help.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true as well.
Yeah. I remember there's been, like, specific times in my life. There's one moment in particular where, say, on Tuesday, one Tuesday, many years ago, I had this feeling where I was like, I should call this friend. Like, she's been on my mind for a little bit. I should just go ahead and call her. And I didn't, because that's me. I just don't call people on the phone at all, hardly. It's just that I'm just not that type of person. Like, I'm just not a phone talker type of person. And come to find out, a day or two after I had that thought, where I was like, I'm going to go ahead and call her. Like, I'm going to call her. I should call her. But I ended up not calling her. She had also died of suicide. And it just filled my life, for 2 months after that, of what ifs. Obviously the universe is trying to send me some kind of signal. Was she trying to send out a signal to me? Or was it just, what was that? What was that?
Well, and that's the thing, is that you can't know, and it's too much weight for one person to bear to say, yes, it was on you. Mm-hmm. It was your chance to save a life, but it's not. Mm-mm. Because we're all human beings, and I really don't believe that the world works this way. Very much like Steve, I am a rational person, and I don't feel like we're destined for anything. Yes, I do believe in something a little bit more mystical and fantastical than just everyday reality, but I really don't feel like that's the way that the world works.
Yeah. And who's to say, like, even if I were to call her, like,
Yeah.
if I had called her, if it would have made a difference. And for all I know, maybe if I did call her, she could have still died of suicide, and then I would have still had that, like,
Yeah.
what did I say? Was it me that caused it? Like,
Exactly.
why, could I have said something different to, like, make her not do that? So I don't know. It's just really complicated.
And it's complicated. That's why I bring up it was Nell destined to do this. Because it wouldn't matter if her siblings picked up then.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Hugh kind of alluded to a little bit, was that the house kind of had her at
Yeah.
that point. Was that it didn't matter.
But also, he did, try to tell him that, like, right before his wife had her episode, that he did suggest that they go away. Like,
Yeah.
hey, why don't you go away for a couple of, for like a week or two, and then come back, like, go on vacation or something like that, because the house, like, she needs a break from the house.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing, like, if they had taken that break, like, was she still going to be destined to become like this? Because with his experience with his own family,
Yeah.
when they, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the
Hugh.
What?
You talking about Hugh?
I'm talking about the Dudleys.
Oh. Okay.
Remember, because Mr. Dudley told Hugh, I got confused. Mr. Dudley told Hugh to take his wife out for vacation. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So, because Mr. Dudley had experienced himself that when his wife stepped back and didn't spend so much time in the house, that she felt better, that she got better.
Yeah.
So why did the kids... Like, why were the kids still experiencing what they were experiencing if they were outside of the house, especially Nell and Luke?
The house attached itself to them. And it was through, I think, a little bit through Olivia, a little bit through just them living in the house full time for that summer.
The mold.
The mold.
The alien mold, which is another fan theory.
Well, that's combining two fan theories. But, the alien parasite and the mold are like two separate ones. But
then why didn't they affect the other three as much?
Well, yeah, and why didn't it affect the Dudleys? Because the Dudleys were there during the day, but not at night. So, I mean, they probably spend as much time, if not more, than the, man, I can't remember what the last name of the family is. It's not Cranes.
Yeah, the Cranes.
Cranes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's something I don't think we're ever going to find out. We could go on and on about different theories about why that could be, but
it doesn't matter ultimately to the story.
No.
And see, I think that's ultimately what is the most important aspect of this, is that the details don't matter. It's the story that matters. It's about that grief, about how we as human beings deal with that grief, and that we probably don't ever get closure.
Yeah.
We just find ways of getting comfortable with it.
Yeah, which is A-okay.
It's okay, but it's also maybe a little disheartening.
Yeah, it is a little sad, but thinking about my own experience with the deaths I've experienced in my past, like, it's true, though. Like,
you don't want to get rid of it in a way, because it's like forgetting them.
Well, and also, too, like, with me, I don't know what lies out there. Like, I'm not going to be the person that has all the answers, and I'm not willing to admit that. So,
Yeah.
Anyway.
We've run out of time, surprisingly.
Yeah, so just a brief little closing like usual. So we eventually, like soon, are going to be talking about The Magician Season 3. So if you want to give us your insight on what you liked, didn't like, what you want us to talk about, please let us know by February 3rd.
How it related to the second book?
If you want to, you don't have to. And then also, too, of course, you can leave us those messages about that, or the OA, or the Haunting of Hill House, or what else have we...
Whatever else we have talked about or will talk about.
Pretty much whatever you guys want to talk about. Just let us know. If you guys have any suggestions, too, I mean, by all means, chime in and ask and give us suggestions. You can find us on Instagram at Patron Saints of Pop Culture. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Real Honest Faith. And then we also have a website, thehonestfaith.com.
Thank you so much for listening. With all that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.